They all saw him, yet no one truly noticed him. And that was the first mistake. The camera caught it clearly later, but in that moment, the old man was invisible. His jacket was faded, his hands shook slightly, and his steps were slow, measured, careful. He stood near the edge of the parking lot, holding a small envelope like it weighed more than it should. What no one knew was that inside that envelope sat proof powerful enough to unravel everything Karen believed she controlled. Karen, on the other hand, was very visible, loud, confident, certain. She walked with the kind of authority that comes from thinking rules bend when you speak sharply enough. Her sunglasses hid nothing about her attitude, and her phone was already recording before she even opened her mouth. She loved moments like this. Moments where she could correct someone, dominate someone, ignore someone who didn't fit her version of importance. The old man tried to speak. His voice barely cut through the noise of passing cars and Karen's impatience. He asked calmly, politely, if she could move her vehicle just a little, just enough so he could pass. Karen didn't even look at him at first. She waved him off like a fly, eyes glued to her screen, lips curling in annoyance. When she finally turned, it wasn't kindness she offered. It was dismissal. "I don't have to listen to you," she snapped, loud enough for others to hear. "This doesn't concern you." Her words landed hard, and a few bystanders shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to intervene or keep walking. Most chose the second option. The old man nodded once, not in defeat, in understanding. He had seen this before. People mistaking silence for weakness, patience for ignorance, age for irrelevance. He adjusted his grip on the envelope, stepped back, and said nothing more. Karen smirked, satisfied, convinced she had won something that never required a fight. What she didn't realize was that this moment had been documented long before. Her phone started recording. The security camera above them blinked quietly. The timestamp ticked forward, and the envelope in the old man's hands contained a decision already made, a consequence already signed. As Karen turned away, convinced the problem had disappeared, the old man slowly looked up, not at her, but at the building behind her. His eyes hardened, sharp and clear, revealing something far different than what everyone assumed. And that was when the real story began. Karen strutted toward the building entrance, heels clicking, sharply against the pavement like punctuation marks on a sentence she thought she'd already finished. To her, the old man was history. Another obstacle brushed aside. Another reminder that confidence could overpower observed weakness. She adjusted her sunglasses and smiled at her phone camera, narrating the encounter in her own version of events, already framing herself as the reasonable one. Behind her, the old man remained still for several seconds. People assumed he was shaken or embarrassed. In reality, he was counting breaths, counting steps, counting the exact moment when the situation crossed from inconvenience into recordable misconduct. He slipped the envelope back into his jacket and reached into his pocket, pulling out something far smaller but far more consequential. A folded identification card worn smooth at the edges. Across the lot, a maintenance worker watched the exchange closely. He had seen Karen before. Everyone had. She complained loudly, frequently, and without hesitation. Rules were weapons to her, not boundaries. The worker considered stepping in earlier, but hesitated. Now he noticed the old man's posture change. His shoulders straightened. His gaze lifted. The hesitation vanished from his movements. Karen reached the front doors and was stopped by a uniformed security officer. "Ma'am," he said cautiously, "there's been a report about unauthorized parking in the accessible lane." Karen scoffed. "That's ridiculous. I'm only here for a minute." She gestured broadly, loud enough for nearby people to hear. "That old guy back there doesn't even belong here." The words traveled farther than she expected. The old man walked forward, calmly, deliberately. The crowd noticed him now. He handed the security officer his ID first, then nodded toward Karen's vehicle. The officer's expression changed instantly. Not confusion, but recognition, respect. He straightened, suddenly alert, suddenly careful with his words. Karen noticed the shift. Her smile faltered. "What is this?" she demanded. "Why are you listening to him?" She laughed nervously, but no one joined in. The security officer radioed for assistance, his tone clipped and professional. "We need management here, immediately." The old man finally spoke again. His voice was still quiet, but it carried. "I didn't want it to be like this," he said. "I only asked for space to walk through." He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed, the kind of disappointment that comes from knowing exactly how this ends. Karen's phone kept recording, capturing the moment her certainty cracked. She tried to argue, to reassert control, but the words tangled together. Her authority meant nothing here. Not anymore. As management approached and the crowd leaned in closer, Karen realized something chilling. The man she ignored wasn't powerless. He was patient. And patience, she was about to learn, is far more dangerous. The building manager arrived breathless, tie slightly crooked, confidence draining the moment he saw who stood beside the security officer. His eyes flicked from Karen's illegally parked vehicle to the old man's face, and then back again. Whatever explanation he had prepared dissolved instantly. He cleared his throat, suddenly careful, suddenly respectful. "Sir," he said to the old man, "I wasn't informed you'd be here today." Karen's stomach tightened. That single sentence hit harder than any accusation. "What do you mean informed?" she snapped. "This is ridiculous." "He was blocking my way. I did nothing wrong." Her voice was loud, but it wavered now, lacking the sharp edge she relied on. The old man raised a hand gently, not to silence her but to pause the moment. He turned slightly so others could see his face clearly. The wrinkles told stories of time, but give no hint of weakness. "I asked politely," he said. "That's all." Then he nodded to the manager. "Let's proceed." The manager swallowed. He gestured toward the entrance, but the old man shook his head. "Here is fine," he replied. "Everyone deserves to hear this." A murmur rippled through the small crowd. Phones lifted. Karen's recording suddenly felt less like control and more like a trap. The envelope came out again, slowly, deliberately. The old man opened it and removed a stack of documents, inspection reports, signed notices, photographs. He handed them to the manager, who flipped through them, his face growing pale with every page. "These violations," the old man continued, "have been ignored for months. Complaints dismissed. Rules selectively enforced." His eyes met. "Karen's. Your complaints were always processed quickly. Others were buried." Karen laughed sharply, desperate. "So what, are you some kind of inspector?" She scoffed. "You think this scares me?" But her hands trembled, and the crowd could see it. The old man reached into his jacket once more and produced a badge, outdated in shine, but unmistakable in authority. "Retired," he said calmly, "but still consulted. Still called when things don't add up." He paused. "Like today." Silence fell heavy. The manager's voice barely worked. "Sir, we'll correct this immediately." Karen's face drained of color. The rules she loved had turned against her, reshaping the ground beneath her feet. The system she believed she controlled had been watching her instead. The old man stepped back, giving her space, the same space she'd refused him earlier. "I asked for courtesy," he said quietly. "You gave me contempt." Security moved toward Karen's car, and for the first time, Karen realized the past she dismissed was now standing directly in front of her, holding the future. Karen stood frozen as security placed a notice on her windshield. The paper fluttered slightly in the breeze, loud in the silence she created. Around her, phones recorded everything, every excuse, every twitch, every failed attempt to regain authority. The old man watched calmly, not with triumph, but with finality. "This isn't fair," Karen insisted, her voice cracking. "You can't do this to me." The manager didn't answer. He couldn't. The documents were real. The violations undeniable. Years of entitlement had finally met a moment that wouldn't bend. The old man stepped forward one last time. "Fairness begins when we see each other," he said. "You didn't see me." He nodded toward the accessible lane, the blocked walkway, the space she believed only she deserved. Rules exist to protect people, not egos. Karen's live stream ended abruptly when her phone battery died. The timing felt cruel, almost poetic. Without an audience, her performance collapsed. She stood alone, surrounded by witnesses instead of supporters. Security informed her the vehicle would be towed and a formal review opened. Fines would follow. Access privileges suspended pending investigation. Each sentence landed heavier than the last. Karen nodded mechanically, already planning arguments that no longer mattered. The crowd slowly dispersed, satisfied, quieter now. Justice, when it arrives without shouting, feels strangely calm. The old man waited until the area cleared before turning away. No speeches, no celebration, just quiet resolution. As he walked, the maintenance worker finally spoke. "Thank you," he said simply. The old man smiled just once. "You're welcome," he replied. "Next time, speak sooner." Karen watched him leave, realization settling like a weight on her chest. She hadn't lost to a grandpa. She had lost to accountability, to patience, to the consequences she thought only applied to others. Later that evening, footage of the incident spread online. Viewers didn't cheer loudly. They nodded. They recognized the pattern. Power misused. Respect withheld. Karma delivered calmly. And somewhere in the comments, one sentence appeared again and again, echoing the lesson Karen learned too late. Ignoring people doesn't make them powerless. It only reveals who truly is. The story didn't end there. For many, it became a reminder that respect is not optional, and that arrogance often collapses under quiet truth. The old man returned home unnoticed, content knowing he had corrected a wrong, not for fame, but But for fairness, Karen, meanwhile, faced long nights replaying the moment she chose dismissal over decency. Consequences rarely arrive loudly, but they always arrive. When they do, excuses vanish, and character is all that remains. The lesson lingered. Simple and unavoidable. Ignoring people does not erase them, it exposes you. Remember this the next time power feels effortless, because humility is the only shield against regret. Learn it early. If you loved seeing Karen finally get her wake-up call, smash that like button, comment what you would have done in her shoes, and don't forget to subscribe for more wild HOA and Karen stories. You won't believe what happens next.